I'll let him go ahead here with his review. Go ahead, get that there. Started. And we'll go ahead. So, Tim is going to be giving us a review for Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree there, this new DLC expansion for Elden Ring. Tim, take it away, man.
Well, there were pretty high expectations going into the DLC because FromSoft had indicated that this was going to be a one and done deal with the DLC, and they didn't want to just give us piecemeal delivery so that they could tell a cohesive story and create an overall grand product. I would say they've delivered on that. I would say ultimately, just out of the gate, I will say that I thoroughly enjoyed it. I got at least 60 hours of gameplay out of the expansion, and I
That's a lot
tried
of DLC.
if for a DLC, for a $45 DLC, I was actually saying, wow, I can't believe this wasn't more, because I would have paid at least 45 in DLC for any other game and gotten half as much. And half as much in quality, because goddamn, visually, you see the cinematics coming out, and we have it pulled up here that it paints this kind of abstract story of area being besieged, and you're at starting the expansion kind of wondering, okay, well, where's this city that was burned to the ground? And it's a very good while into the game, like 10 hours into the DLC, where it's kind of made like, oh shit, this massive graveyard that I've been wandering through, that this entire zone is kind of a graveyard of this battlefield. It's what remains after the flames died down. And the beasts that you see, like the lion-headed beasts, they've all since been slain. All of the that remains is the occupiers of this long decimated battle. And it's given to you with more of FromSoft's superb environmental storytelling, which, if you're really just looking for something that is more, can I kill this? Can I go here? Can I loot this? I don't really care about story. This works for you. You'll be confused if you ever decide to pay attention, but then again, so are the people paying attention. One of the frustrating things this game does is it is perhaps even more obfuscated in terms of certain lore elements that are teased in more substantial amount in the base game. You think that you're going to get answers with the DLC, and you're really left just asking different questions. Which in itself isn't bad. I think that's one of the things FromSoft games tend to do, is they tend to provoke thought both on moral and ethical topics, but just and also the idea of like what it means to age, to die, to grow as a person, to try to break the mold you were cast in. And those are all narrative elements, I think, that are present throughout this DLC, as we follow one of the few plot threads that is coherent, is that of Mikola the Kindly Mikola, a god that was teased in the earlier stages of the game. Or you're going through the base game, and occasionally you'll see a statue of this small child being embraced by a boss that everyone has grown to know as the most difficult boss. And so, based on her notoriety and her proximity to Mikola, he was really kind of hyped up to be this kind of great figure. He held domain over the realm of dreams. He held domain over love, over affection of all sort. He held domain over nascency, the concept of beginnings, which is an incredibly powerful domain that we see kind of affect all of his plans throughout the realms, or the lands between, that we have encountered over time. For instance, the base game sees him try to cure his sister of her rot, fails at that, just kind of abandons it. It dies in its nascency, the plan. Tries to save his brother. That plan also dies in nascency. And here we see him on the path to ascension, casting aside portions of himself so that he may be pure enough to ascend to godhood and divinity. One of the things that is shown in the trailer is Marika, the god of the lands between as it is now, mother of Mikola and all of the demigods we've encountered thus far. We actually get to see her homeland. And we get to see this beautiful landscape that changes so much topographically. Sage, I'm sure you kind of remember how vertical Elden Ring kind of became as you get into like Altus Plateau or even the mountaintop of giants.
Oh
It's
yeah, these areas are just they're huge. There's so much packed in them. There's so many. I mean, if I wasn't playing it with Tim, I wouldn't have noticed so many of the things that there were to find in these games.
and I would say the verticality is dialed up to 11 here, maybe even 12, because there is
Take that. This is Spinal Tap.
yeah, it's slower, or it's like rather the world is like more condensed. They said it was going to be the size of Limgrave. That lie detector test determined that was a lie. It was about half the size of the existing continent. They added about roughly 50% more overworld. And you would think it would be kind of difficult to give 4 visually compelling zones. And you're right, because they did 5. And arguably there's subzones within those zones where like there is this area like that deals with the frenzied flame. And rather than being an area that is completely suffused in flame, we just get this quiet, burnt out husk of a forest where no life remains but that of ones touched by the frenzied flame. And it's this viscerally creepy forest that as you're coming upon it, Torrent abandons you. Oh, hey, we got you, BFG. Hi.
Yeah.
We are kind of pulled into this little sense of cosmic horror as your mount abandons you, as your spirits abandon you, because it is revealed that this flame is the only thing that can harm spirits. And they come up with more answers, I think, to the base game than I really even kind of anticipated. They answered questions that a lot of people weren't really left with, or they kind of present ideas that just weren't at all present in, like those ghost worms right there. Those ghost worms, no one knows what those are. Not a damn person knows what they are. Are they cool? Yeah. What the fuck are they? No clue. Do they have any existing lore? You bet your bottom dollar there isn't. But they appear in the graveyards in this area, and it follows the same indication of other blue spirits that share that same coloration and that same tendency to glow red when they're angered. The jellyfish spirits that we see in the core game. And it's throughout the journey of this area, you're presented with a lot of things that seem disparately, loosely connected. But they all thematically tend to jive together rather well. You get these people that are following Mikola the Kind, and they say only the kindest words about him. But they've kind of been MK Ultra'd into loving this god. And halfway through the game, or the DLC, you get this little message that says, a great rune has been shattered. Now, the great runes are the things that you've been collecting this entire time. None of them have been broken to this point. And you've been following Mikola, who's been casting off pieces of himself. You come to find this wild idea that this god that has been posed as good the entire time might not be what you think it is. And it all just kind of unravels from there. It's George R.R. Martin. We were playing some of that beforehand, and oh my god, yeah, the incest is present. Like, wow,
That's how you know he was involved.
Yeah, the idea that it's like yeah, but the right there, you get like remember the dragon god that's missing heads. You get to fight the thing that managed to kill the dragon god. And you get to see the reason for all of these things. And I really think, despite the lack of narrative elements that are in some traditional video games, or most traditional video games, I think it really lands a well-written story that kind of leaves you like angry. It leaves you feeling not content. Like you expect bad things to happen, but you find yourself hoping against hope that some of these characters are going to have a good fucking time of it. And so it's really kind of interesting how that all plays out, how the gameplay plays out, because they've managed to create these systems in place where no matter how strong you were before, you are still getting slapped around like a rag doll. People were mad, so mad at how hard this DLC was when it first came out. And you can really tell that by the metrics in like the
No,
trophies
who was the
for which
casual
bosses
players?
were completed. And yeah, it's like a lot of people encounter the first boss, didn't realize they were supposed to collect a reagent that is scattered all around the map and linked to various things that don't really have any seeming connection. And there's like 50 of them, and you have to get 50 of them to get upgraded to like plus 20 or whatever. And you don't start really being survivable until plus 10. So balance was something that was like not strictly communicated at the beginning, and it was actually they had to hot fix quite a few things over the first initial couple weeks because they didn't quite test these things, run the numbers well. And it's kind of disappointing that something so grand in scale could fall flat in terms of these metrics that they had 2 years of player data on what is working and what isn't, and what numbers are doing what, like what patterns in player behavior are. And the lack of foresight is a little disappointing because it's like without that polish, or with that polish, it would have been an otherwise perfect game. You see, Promised Consort Radon is a neat thing because Mikola brings his half brother back to life using the body of Moog, who is the portal of the other. He got kidnapped while he was in that cocoon, right? Turns out he mind controlled the guy who kidnapped him so that when he emerged from the cocoon, he could use the guy as a blood sacrifice to open a portal up to the Shadow Realm. And the Shadow Realm is just the center of the continent that you are on, which has been shrouded in veil because that was the god of this land's homeland. And she burned the entire area to the ground. And she committed such horrifying war crimes that she, rather than try to like cover it, she covered it up in covering the physical land up from being accessible by any means other than magic, and wiped the minds of everyone in the lands between of its existence.
That's just the backstory of like one boss, basically,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's a yeah, like there's what 40, 50 bosses in this DLC. They add 3 new weapon types, they add a bunch of new spells, they add so much.
Martial arts, right? Like you can like do hand to hand now.
Yeah, they add martial arts. They I have yet to see a video game DLC that was this robust and that made this many improvements to this many systems, or visual or gameplay wise. And the level of dedication that they showed on it, I was like, I'm genuinely impressed. In that, like, starting from like Demon Souls 2008, that they've gone from a company capable of that to this. Uh, so it's definitely kind of a really it's something that I recommend, I guess, to everyone who's even interested in playing Elden Ring, which is like, is the DLC worth it? 100% worth it. It's nothing but an improvement.
Okay.
So you didn't just. Oh,
Oh,
go ahead.
sorry. I
Uh,
was just going to say if I could throw one question at Tim. We talk about anime a lot, me and Josh. So I was curious, the like anime inspiration here. this company's always been inspired by like Berserk, most notably, and it had kind of an anime influence. And I've heard, I feel like that this DLC is maybe like the most intensely that you can tell that they're kind of been inspired by anime like Berserk, manga like Berserk, and stuff like that. Is that a correct read on that?
So yes, and I think the most glaring example of that is uh, Mikola, and how closely his trajectory, at least up to a certain point, mirrors that of Griffith in the Berserk manga or anime, and his descent into the cocoon is the lead is followed. He gains so many people around him. He gains this massive following of people willing to die for him. And you even come across this character who tried to go up against him, tried to kill him, and he felt his heart weaken. And then he's like, fine, yeah, no, I can't kill you. Instead, I'm just going to serve you for the rest of my life and be fine with it. Because
Definitely wearing inspiration on its sleeve for sure.
yeah, and the blood eclipse, there's so many different elements of Griffith's character that are shown in Mikola, to the point where on the Elden Ring subreddit, it's almost like a faux pas to bring it up, because it's like everyone just kind of knows. It's one of the most obvious inspirations that can be drawn from the DLC.
Cool.
I was gonna ask. So, do you think this is a clear front runner for best DLC of 2024? Or...
I, as someone who hasn't played every DLC, and I know the Alan Wake DLC is coming out, but so far, I would say yes. It's probably honestly the most robust DLC I've played in terms of sheer content of significant quality in at least the 2020s.
I'm very excited for the Alan Wake DLC coming out in October, but like as you know, if you've heard my review for that, you know it's like one of my favorite of all time. But that 3 hours is not going to compare to like the 60-hour Elden Ring DLC. Even if it's the second best of the year, it's not. It's definitely not going to be as good as you know, engaging and just big in terms of content size.
Um, some other big DLC that has come out or already has come out. So there's, of course, we already brought up Alan Wake 2, Night Springs, and the Lake House there. Sage, you did Night Springs, right? We already did review
Yeah.
that.
Night Springs came out in was it June or yeah, June I want to say, and then the Lake House DLC will be coming out sometime in October. We don't have an exact date yet for it.
Diablo 4, Vessel of Hatred is also here. Destiny 2, The Final Shape, is also there as well. There also Final Fantasy is going to be having a new DLC that's going to be
Oh, okay.
coming.
Is that 16?
Yes. Dawn Trail. Yeah.
Okay. I have not played the DLC for that one myself yet, but I've heard good things for sure.
Yeah. This came out in July 2nd.
Okay.
There for that one. Yeah. Yeah. So looks like this will, I guess, at the Game Awards, this will be probably the front runner for best DLC of 2024. There.
I'd
Um.
be even without playing it, I'd honestly be shocked to see anything else get it.
Yeah. So you mentioned kind of the difficulty of this. A lot of people did mention with this DLC how the difficulty of the game, how very hard it is. Yeah. I mean, so do you think for people, do you think it's even harder than the base game itself of Elden Ring? Do you think there, Tim?
Tim, correct me if I'm wrong
Uh,
about this, but the Elden Ring was a little easygoing in a lot of places compared to the other previous Souls games. And
yeah,
this DLC is kind of like, oh, well, if this is the first one you've played, let's knock you back to the rest of the franchise, kind of.
I would liken it to Bloodborne's kind of thing, in that it does that exact thing, which is the earlier game. Well, Bloodborne, I guess, a bit more punishing, but the core Elden Ring, if you're familiar with the series or you have some help, is very easy. Oh, and that's like not a rule, but it's about 80% of things are actually fairly easy, and then the 20% are where the difficulty lies to kind of drive you to explore the other 80%. The DLC presumes that you've already explored most of the open world to reach that point, and it holds no bars accordingly. And yeah, it's brutal. The bosses are brutal. I died as many times, I think, to the DLC bosses as I did to at least 80%, if not more, of the primary bosses from the core game. It is
Who was the hardest boss for you?
Radon, Promised Consort Radon, easily.
I do this.
Radon,
I do see that listed as number 1.
yeah, he's yeah, fuck that guy. I beat him pre-nerf, so I get to gloat, but fuck that guy. Yeah, he was bad enough that they actually had to nerf him because he was and he got nerfed in the core game too, like a couple weeks after it launched, because he was a boss in the core game too with just gravity magic. And now he has gravity magic and a god strapped to his back, fueling like magic fucking laser beam powers, and it's like it's a lot. He has 2 health bars because fuck you, why not?
Of course.
You said 60 hours of content, correct? 60 hours.
Yeah, at least if you go for like 100% or close to 100% of what you can, yeah, you'll end up at about 60 hours. Some people can get through in about 20 if you're following a guide, maybe even a bit quicker, but it's a pretty meaty one.
Okay. And did you 100% it?
I did. I did not stick around to try to like farm like random drops that have like a 5% chance, but everything that is lootable, I looted.
So, what would be your final thoughts and rating for Elden Ring: Shadow of the Erdtree?
I'm gonna say pure cinema. This is honestly one of my favorite things I've played in a while, and it was one of those few things I've finished that has left me just like, wow, I can't wait to experience this kind of feeling again, because there are those few games that you just truly enjoy playing and enjoy unraveling the mystery in, and Alan Wake is one of those games. And I think this game is one of those games, especially with the DLC. So getting both of those in the same year, that's just great.
$60, yeah, it's basically a whole new game, right there. Yeah, I mean that's longer than some some other games there, basically.
That's longer than
Probably
most games that have come out in 2024.
Yeah. How
Maybe
long
some
is
other good ones, but you know.
how long is Wukong? Wukong is what? How long?
Well, one playthrough for Wukong took me like I want to say like 47, 48 hours maybe, but then going back and doing New Game Plus and like 100%ing it and making sure I got everything, I want to say I was like maybe it was 60 for the first playthrough and then like 90 for the 100%. Something like that though.
Okay, yeah. It's a meaty DLC there, for this. So yeah, clear front runner for at the Game Awards for best DLC of 2024. Looks like a really great expansion for Elden Ring there, and Tim gave it a "This is cinema" for it. So high praise for the expansion. So yeah, thank you, Tim, for your review of Elden Ring: Shadow of the Erdtree. There, thank you.